So you're ready to make your very first sourdough starter, and I'm going to show you how to do it, debunking the myth that you need 1 cup of flour to 1 cup of water. Now, when I first got into sourdough bread making, everyone always said you have to have at least 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of water, and that is the ratio to start with. Now, that is what actually inspired me to make this video, because I took these beautiful, delicious sourdough cinnamon rolls to a housewarming party a couple of weeks ago. And the woman was like, oh my gosh, I really want to do sourdough. But she's like, I got so overwhelmed with my starter, because she said I had so much of it. She had 3 kids. One was a newborn baby. She's like, I had so much starter, I didn't know what to do with it. I was like, sis, you don't need 1 cup of flour to 1 cup of water. You just need 1 tablespoon of flour and 1 tablespoon of water. And that is what inspired me to make this video, because you should be able to make your world of sourdough. You can make sourdough bagels.
Looks like a breakfast restaurant place. What kind of grass did you put on this?
All of them. Microgreens, you mean? That looks so good.
Oh, just like that. This is a sin.
It's a sin? You know what we're missing?
I'm so happy.
Okay. Sourdough English muffins, sourdough Pop-Tarts.
Preserves.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you put diabetes stuff in here. Stop it. This is so freaking good. This crust. I don't know what kind of cocaine you put in it.
The crust is so good.
Keep putting cocaine in it every day, please.
Crust is good, baby.
It's crack.
I'm gonna perfect it even more. I need the song. I need the song.
Jesus is real.
These are amazing. Strawberry Pop-Tarts. I need a little bit better execution in terms of like design, but flavor is...
Sierra, this is...
You can't say anything about this flavor. My neighbor was just like, it's the best thing I ever had. She's like, those are so good. Those are so pretty. Homemade sourdough Pop-Tarts. Apple butter filling and a strawberry filling. Sourdough crackers, sourdough sandwich breads. What do you think of the bread?
Really good. This is fire. What?
Does it taste like the store's bread?
No. Well, it's tastier. It tastes like, you know, when you get the, you want a fancy sandwich, so you go to the baker section and buy fancy bread.
Yeah.
That's what this tastes like.
It does?
Or like Panera bread or something like that fancy bread they use. Oh, that's good.
Sourdough cinnamon rolls.
Oh my god, I can't believe you made this.
Yeah.
My friend made this. This from scratch. Straight up cinnamon rolls from scratch.
I have made all the sourdough things, and I wanted to show you that in just 10 days, you can have a successful sourdough starter for you and your family. And that is one thing that I love about sourdough. You know, it opens up the tradition to start passing it down from generation to generation. I noticed that in our family, we do not have a lot of tradition. So when I got into sourdough, it was really appealing to me, the idea of having this sourdough starter that I could pass down to kids and their kids and their kids, or, you know, me and my husband have been on the fertility journey, but however it works out, that I could make something that could just continue to be passed down. And there are families out there who have said that they've had sourdough starters in their family for 133 years or 200 years. So I want to show you over the next 10 days, you can have a successful sourdough starter with just 1 tablespoon of flour and 1 tablespoon of water. Now, I do want to show you before we get into the video that just to give you a little edumacation, okay? Now, if you were to put in 1 cup of flour and 1 cup of water, that would probably, this is a quart-sized mason jar, so that'd probably put you about here. Now, whenever you have sourdough starter, it is always rising and falling. So after you feed it 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of water, it would double in size, it would rise, and then it would fall. So once it's here, then you add another cup of flour and another cup of water. So then it's gonna rise, and then it's gonna fall. So when it rises, that's how you see when people get those really cool shots of the sourdough starter overflowing and bubbling over, because they let it rise over. They know what they're doing. So with 1 tablespoon, you're never gonna have discard. You're gonna always just have a tiny bit. And I'm gonna show you guys in another video where when I first got into sourdough, I made my starter and I took it on an airplane and I had to pour all of it out. And I only had what was left on the side of the jar, and I was able to still maintain my starter. So sourdough is extremely forgiving. And I also want to tell you that over the course of the 10 days, I missed day 6 of the feeding. I fed the sourdough starter on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. I missed day 6 because it was my wedding anniversary. I picked up on day 7, day 8, day 9, and day 10. And I had a beautiful, healthy starter by day 10. In fact, on day 10, I fed the starter, and then I made a levain, and I made 3 loaves of bread on day 11. That's another myth that I wanted to debunk. The woman at the party told me that everyone always told her, and that's what I was told too, is that when you first make a sourdough starter, you have to wait for at least a month to a month and a half before you can make bread. That's a lie, girl, that's a lie. I made 3 loaves of bread on day 11. It took me all day. I was so tired. I had a flight to catch the next morning on day 12, and I stayed up till midnight making all the loaves of bread. So I'm gonna show you over the next 10 days, you are going to be able to make a sourdough starter. So easy. You're not gonna have any discard. You're not gonna have to throw any out. You're just gonna keep adding, and you're gonna have the perfect amount of starter, and you're gonna be able to maintain it. So I'm really excited to show you sourdough starter in 10 days. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to add was that I did my best to feed the starter every single day at the same time, but life happens, and I'm not a slave to my starter, nor should you be. So I'm gonna show you over the next 10 days that you can have a healthy starter, and right after this 10 days, you can make your very first sourdough loaf of bread, and it's gonna taste so good. All right, let me show you. All right, so the first thing you need is a clean mason jar. Please run it through the dishwasher or wash it in super hot soapy water, because if there is any bacteria in your jar at all that's invisible, it can breed mold in your starter. So make sure that jar is nice and clean. So I am using whole wheat flour, which is really great for gluten development when you're making your sourdough bread. So I just used 1 tablespoon of whole wheat flour and 1 tablespoon of water. And you just want to make a nice thick paste, and then we're just going to cover it up with a paper towel, and then I rubber band it. Day 1, night 1. And just let it sit. And as you can see here on night 1, it already has a nice little bubble. I was like, oh my goodness, look at that little bubble. I didn't remember seeing that when I made my sourdough starter the very first time that I did it. All right, so day 2, we've got that paste. It's really hard to see the rise and the fall when we're using such a small amount, but don't worry, it works. It's great. So again, we're doing 1 tablespoon of flour and 1 tablespoon of water. I was just about an hour off because the first day I did 10:30, and then today I'm doing 9:41 a.m. And as you guys will see as you watch the video, my times were not consistent. Maybe you can be consistent with your times, but I found that it never really mattered when I went to go make that first loaf of bread. So you're just gonna mix it up, make it into a nice paste, and cover it up with a paper towel. Day 2, night 2. Again, do not put a tight lid because that can breed mold. On night 2, we see those really nice air bubbles that we know that sourdough is starting to ferment and the fermentation is taking place. So that was really cool to see too on night 2. All right, so here we are at day 3, And now I'm at 1:51 p.m. So as you can see, I did not get my morning feeding. You can see there's a little layer on the top, but not much. But we can see that the sourdough starter is active. You can see all those little bubbles. It kind of makes me wonder if I could have made a loaf on day 3. But listen, we'll do that experiment another time. So again, we're just doing that 1 tablespoon of whole wheat flour and 1 tablespoon of water. You can see there that it's got a nice thick paste. And then I just put my paper towel back over it, rubber band it up, and leave it. Day 4. You can see the bubbles. Day 4 was almost exactly 24 hours later. Today we did it at 1:21 p.m. I'm just removing my paper towel, checking it again. It's looking really good. No mold, nothing growing. Those little nice sourdough air bubbles. The fermentation is taking place. And again, I'm just adding in my 1 tablespoon of whole wheat flour to my 1 tablespoon of water. 5. This is day 5. On day 5, we are now at 9:25 a.m. So not quite 24 hours, but we can see we've still got those really nice air bubbles going. The fermentation is taking place. Of course, every single day I'm always inspecting for any mold or anything that's weird like that, but it was still on a roll. So just again, 1 tablespoon of whole wheat flour and 1 tablespoon of water. Mixing it up into a nice paste. I know some people say you have to use a wooden spoon. Listen, I love using the Vitamix spatula. Day 5 night. It is my favorite kitchen tool. I use it for everything. So day 5 night, we saw some really beautiful air bubbles. Like I told you guys in the beginning of the video, we missed day 6 feeding because it was my wedding anniversary. So go live life. It's okay. Your sourdough starter will be fine. All right, resuming day 7 at 10:23 a.m. I am again just adding in my 1 tablespoon of whole wheat flour and my 1 tablespoon of water. Now, as you start learning sourdough, you don't have to be so precise. You don't have to feed it exactly, but for the purposes of teaching you today, I wanted to do a 1-to-1 ratio. This was day 7. I skipped day 6 because it was my wedding anniversary and just never got around to it. Then at night, very bubbly. Day 7, night 7, it's looking very healthy. When I first got into making starter, everyone suggested feeding it rigorously on day 6, night 6, like twice a day. But I just wanted to show you it's still looking very healthy. Nothing is happening. Sourdough starter is pretty forgiving. Today is day 8. Now at this point on day 8, we're at 4:40 p.m. And clearly there is no rhythm to what time I am feeding my sourdough starter every day. I'm kind of all over the place, but again, that just shows you your starter will be fine. So again, I'm just feeding it that 1 tablespoon of flour and 1 tablespoon of water, mixing it up well. And I can't remember if I shared with you guys earlier in the video, but sometimes in fermentations, you will get a white-like substance on the top of the sourdough or sauerkraut or anything that you're fermenting. That is called calm yeast. Today is day 9. So on one of the days, I'm pretty sure I saw a little bit of calm yeast at the top, but you can peel it off, you can mix it in. I just mixed it in and it was fine. On day 9, we are doing our feeding at 1:49 p.m. The bubbles are looking so good, so good, so good, so good. I know you hate it. Okay. Anyway, we are doing that 1 tablespoon of whole wheat flour and 1 tablespoon of water. You can see it's a nice thick paste. You might have seen some people's sourdough starter be a little bit more liquidy. That's okay too. I've had liquidy sourdough starter. Again, a lot of people when they start having starters are not super approximate. So this afternoon, I'm just putting on a rubber band so that you can see the growth. At night, you can see that it has started to rise.
You could probably do this earlier on in the process, but we're using so little flour, it's kind of hard to see the growth. But you can see it's starting to grow, baby, grow.
Day 10. Today is day 10.
All right, so we have arrived at day 10 at 2:43 p.m., which this is actually the perfect time to feed your starter because this means that it's going to be active and bubbly by 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., especially if it's a summer month. In the winter, it may take a little longer. And so I love that I had this last feeding because once I fed my starter at 2:43, it was active and bubbly at night, and I made a beautiful leaven around 8 or 9 p.m. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how I used this sourdough starter to make sourdough bread after having a only 10-day-old starter. So just in general too, if you're making sourdough bread, this is a really good time of day to feed your starter so that you can make your levain late at night and then wake up and make your bread.
11 on night 10. It has risen.
So day 10, night 10, we have a beautiful active starter that has risen, and now we are going to make our leaven.
All right, friend, so you now have a brand new sourdough starter if you have completed this 10 days, and now you are ready to make your very first loaf of bread. I mean, isn't that what we all make starter for anyway, is bread? I mean, all the other things are really cool, like the pie crust and the Pop-Tarts, but making your own loaf of bread is probably the most satisfying thing you can do. So you now have a successful starter, and I want to show you in the next video that is in the description box how to make your very first loaf of bread with your brand new starter. And hey, don't forget, if you're somebody out there that has children, if I had children, I would be like, look, you're in charge of the starter now. It's your job to feed it and make sure it's taken care of and making sure it's healthy, so you can give your kids responsibilities in the kitchen too, not just with pets and chores. You gotta give them some kitchen responsibility. I would have loved if my mom knew about sourdough starter when I was a kid. But anyway, let's go make your very first loaf of bread, and thanks for hanging out with me for the last 10 days.